Oh, super early. All right, Black Rose, I'll try to give you the explanation of Savage Worlds dice system. Very basic, and I'm going to leave a lot of words out, and it's a little more to it than I'll tell you, but just so you understand. So, say if you're performing skills or doing an attack or doing anything in the game, from D4 to D12, a dice will be given to that thing. So maybe in combat, you could attack with a D8. Maybe if you're using a specific skill, the skill is like a D4. So say you're going to perform with a D4, with a skill, say, with your D4, you'll get a wild card, but you get a wild card and all your rolls, well, it's like a wild dice. Wild card, they call it, I think they call it, yeah, wild card. What's a wild card? I'll simplify it for you. It's a D6. You get it with every dice roll. So it won't matter. You'll get this every time. So you are going to perform at the skill. You roll your D4 and your D6. You don't add them. You never add the wild card dice to the initial dice, but you get to take the highest roll. Say you rolled a 1 with the 4, D4, and you roll a 4 with the D6. You take the 4. Okay, so here's another important part. The 4 would let you succeed using the skill, but why? Because every success is a 4. So if you rolled a 3, like a 1 to 3, you'd still fail with the skill. Doesn't matter if you're taking a 3, you still fail. You need a 4 to succeed. That's on all rolls here. That's simple. Let's start using the die, or start for using a skill, right? You can roll the wild card dice to the point where you roll a 6. If you roll a 6, you can roll it again. So if you roll max, you can roll it again. And some things like using a skill can like have higher quality. So if you hit it once on a 4, like succeed, and you roll up to 8 again, because every success has to be 4 more points. So it would be like 4, you succeeded with the skill. If you could do better with the skill, like a higher outcome, like a better outcome with the skill, you'd have to roll an 8. So you again, the wild card one, you can roll a 6 and extend. You do that with the wild card dice. So say you're going to attack and you have a D8 and a D6. Okay, so say you roll a 7. Well, okay, that's good. You roll a 7 with the D8. You're going to take that number. Now you got to look at the person you're attacking. So say their defense is, and they have a defense. We'll assume low here, even though it could be different numbers. Just an easy explanation. So say they have a defense of 3 and you rolled the 7. Well, that's good. You need 4 to hit. That 7 lets you hit them for 1 wound. Now, in a regular NPC, not a boss, they only have hit points are like wounds, right? So they have 1 wound. That would mean you take them out. If you rolled a 6, you really don't damage them. It's called shaken up. It does affect them, but they're not wounded, right? So say you rolled a 6. That's still, you succeed over the defense, but you don't cause them a wound. When it comes to the wound, a DM, a game master, can decide if that's death or alive, because they don't have to place any detailed rules on this stuff to the common NPC. Common NPCs are like fodder. If you're facing a boss is more like your character. A boss will get a wild card. So that wild card is not something a normal NPC gets. A boss will, right? And they have 3 wounds. So you got to damage them 3 times to take them out. And even when it gets to death, there's rules for that. They could be hurt, they could be bleeding out, they could die, but you follow the detailed rules. These detailed rules exist, but you don't need to apply that to the normal NPCs. You can do just basically what the game master wants to do with them. He can decide they're out cold, or they're going to bleed to death, or they die, but it's sort of a random decision. A vague decision can be made like that. Then there's things called bennies. So just like James Bond, there's the hero point system, which allows you to avoid death or avoid damage. Like you can use it as a way to avoid looking stupid or getting damaged or getting dead. Well, in this game, they're called bennies. They work the same way. You can avoid damage. If you have bennies, you can use your bennies to avoid damage, avoid death, avoid negative things, right? The common NPCs are fodder and usually are easily, quickly taken out. The numbers are not on their side. But bad luck on your side and luck with them, they can still mess you up. right? They can still mess you up. There is, I think, a rule for soaking some stuff, but for the most part, that's it. Now, on initiative is not dice. Initiative is cards. And there's 4 suits, there's like hearts, diamonds, clubs, spades. I think hearts, I forget exactly. I'll know because I got this all the time, but I think hearts is the highest one. So you draw a card for initiative, and you'll never tie. That guarantees. There's no 2 of the same card in the deck. So you draw. So say a king of hearts, if the hearts is the highest valued suit, and you pulled a king of diamonds, I pull a king of hearts, I go first. Because king of hearts is going to be higher than the king of diamonds based on the value of the suit, right? Because they have the suits valued at different values. And we can do that initiative at the start of each round. Sorry about that. So there you go. So I find it funny when people tell me, they'll be like, man, learning Thaco is hard. I'm like, have you heard of Savage Worlds? Let me explain this shit to you. Savage Worlds based on Didlands, but this is a sneak preview. Now, in the old school coverage I'll do openly outside of members only, I'll cover Didlands. Savage Worlds is pretty much Didlands, right? But you guys are getting a game beyond the year 2000 because this is special members only coverage. Same thing with the Babylon 5 game. That's only from the year 2000 on. It's not an old school game from 1974 to 1999, which is, what I'm covering publicly for members only. I break those rules. So think of this like a sneak passing, right? Because you're getting to sort of hear about Didlands in many ways before I cover Didlands openly for the public, right? Okay, I hope the dice system, at least you understand it. So you, from D4 to D12, you, depending on the quality of the skill you're using, how good you're at something, the better you're at something, the higher dice you'll be able to get on that. So if you're really good at the skill, for example, you might get a D8 on that skill. If you're just normal on the skill, you'll get a D4. The wild card dice can extend your number, so they can be added together. Like you roll a 6, you roll again, and you can keep rolling. That's what makes that pretty crazy. Now there's a limit to how many. So if you can only do 3 wounds, you do your 3 wounds, you would stop rolling, right? If there's only a certain level of outcome for the skill, you just roll to your max. That's it. You wouldn't have to keep rolling the dice, right? But you can roll to the point of high. So even a weaker boss or something like that could end up doing some major stuff if the wild card dice goes well for them, right? There you go. There you go. I hope that makes sense on the basic. Because explaining the dice system is a pain in the ass for the new time. But most guys, like I was telling Craig, almost every guy that explains it uses lingo that if you haven't even read the book, you wouldn't even understand the lingo. So it's very confusing. I've given you the explanation about how that works basically without any lingo other than explaining what wildcards means, what that means to you so you could understand that. And that's without lingo. So this is me assuming you don't know the game. Maybe you've read the game Black Rose. I don't know. Craig said he understood that explanation. I already gave it to him. Same thing I said to Craig earlier. I'll hear when you get back. I hope you were here to listen to that, man. Because that is a rough explanation. It takes me a few minutes to get through. Oh, you haven't read the game? Good. Well, then I taught you. I hope it makes, at least the basic of it makes sense. Like if you had a skill, okay, if you're good at it, you have a higher dice. If you're just average at it, you'd have a D4, for example. If you're good at combat, you might have a D8, right? If you're not good at combat, you might have a D4, right? But the wild card makes up for your lacking of something. So if you're weak on a skill, you still get the D6 extra dice, right? As long as you understand the dice system, that's the main thing. If I have to explain it again, I will. But you got to communicate here to me, Black Rose. Dice system takes a minute. I got to make sure I'm explaining it to you right, because this is the thing you got to listen to if you want to understand the dice system. It's a bit of a pain in the ass, but once I explained it out, it should make sense. It made sense to Craig. So I'm trying to see if it makes sense to you. And you got to give me some intelligent response here so I can just be real with me. If you haven't, I'll give you the rundown right quick. But then I want you to listen into the rundown on the dicing. I'll do it for a third time if I have to. But this is something where if you miss like a moment of what I'm saying, likely there could be a break. Like, it's a thing where it only takes me a minute here to explain it really, but you got to listen. Okay, so the initiative system, it's actually really simple. You're drawing cards. Everybody draws a card from a deck, right? Now, the game values certain suits over others. So, like, hearts would be more valuable than, say, spades. So, and it's only one deck. It's not two, so there won't be two of the same card. So, on the initiative, this is the start of the round to see who goes first. If I draw a king of hearts and you draw a king of spades, I would go before you, because the heart suit, that suit is more valuable in the game. So that king is higher than your king. You would go second, right? If it was hearts and I draw a jack of hearts and you draw a queen of hearts, you go first, right? Because it's suit value, then whoever gets the highest card mixed with the idea of value. So 7 of hearts would be more valuable than 7 of clubs, right? Well, what I mean, like a clear, sorry, maybe not an intelligent response, but a clear response. If you don't get something, I'm willing to explain it again. So skill to combat, skill to all your actions are going to be given a dice, right? And the better you're at something, the higher dice that will be. And it'll be from D4 to D12. So if you're really good at something, you get a D12. If you're fucking hot at it. If you're just as average as can be with that thing, lowest end, you get a D4. Now, it doesn't matter how low your thing is, because you need 4 to succeed on anything. The backup is you get this wild dice, this extra D6. So even if you had a D4 for something, man, it's going to be really hard to roll a 4, right, to succeed on a D4 in any good, consistent way, right? The good news is you'll get a D6. Now, when you roll say you're going to perform a skill that it's one of your average skills, has your D4, but you get your D6. You're rolling both. You don't add them together. You take the highest roll. So again, for the example would be, say you roll 1 on your D4 and 4 on your D6. You take the 4, but you succeed at the skill, right? Now there's a bonus trick with the wild dicing. If you roll a 6, you can roll again with that. If you roll a 6 again, you can roll it again. Because sometimes the higher you go in numbers, the better the outcome is. Like if you score 2, well, that would mean this. You're doing this with the skill. So you have a basic success, but you can get further ahead. But you need 4 to succeed, and it's every 4 points. So if you get a 4, good. If you get a 6, you still just get the 1 success on 4. So that would mean you need a 4, and then you need 8 for further success. That's performed with a skill. And now you know the wildcard dice can extend itself by rolling 6. You roll again, and that you can add together, but you can't add the first 2 dice together. Now, say you're doing combat, and you're okay at combat. Say you have like a D8. So you have a D8 at combat, and you rolled a 7. Say you're fighting a normal NPC. This is important because normal NPCs are weaker than bosses. They don't even have the same wild card option as you. They're very weak. The numbers are against them on purpose, though. The game intends for them to be weak compared to you. They're meant to be fodder that the numbers are purposely not siding with, right? They want it to be easy for you to defeat the fodder NPCs. So they're not only bad luck on your end and really good luck on their end can beat you. So a regular NPC doesn't even have that wild card thing. So if they only had, like, say, a one dice, they'll get one dice for their whatever they're doing. They won't get a wild dice. They won't get that extra D6. But say you're fighting one of them. Now, there's no real hit points, but you would almost count the hit points like wounds. So regular NPCs can take one wound and they're out of the fight. Good NPCs can take up to 3, but how do you figure out if you've wounded an NPC? Say you roll a 7 on a D8, you roll lower on D6, so you take the highest roll, so you take your 7. There's a defense that the NPCs will have, right? You'll have yours too. Say the defense was extremely low, just for the sake of example here. So say it was like a 3 and you rolled a 7, that's the wound. You've taken them out. Now, if you roll a 6, you still succeed the defense and you still do something to them. It does affect them. It does hurt them, but it's called they're shaken up. Say you rolled a 6 and they have a defense of 3. Well, that means you didn't get your 4 points above, and you need 4 points above to hit a wound, right? But you can make them shaken up. That will affect them and what they're doing, right? But if you get your wound on them, they're out of the fight. Now, on normal NPCs, you don't got to apply very detailed rules at all. Like on purpose, you don't have to. It's meant for speed, so I don't got to sit there and worry about the detailed rules that might be applied to the boss, right? I can tell you the NPC is dead if I want. I can tell you that they're knocked out. I can tell you that they're bleeding and they're going to die maybe soon, right? But it's really up to me what I want to do with that. As a game master, I have free reign just to do that. Now, if you jump to a boss will have 3 wounds. When they're going against you, they have that wild dice just like you do the D6. And if you do all 3 wounds to them, they don't just instantly, they'll be out of the fight, but there's rules to that. It's either they could be out of the fight or they could even be bleeding to death. They could possibly be dead. But I now have to follow the detailed rules for the boss. Those same rules I do not need to apply to the regular NPC. So only the boss gets the exception of having wild dice like you, needing to be wounded 3 times before you take them out of the fight, right? But because you can wound them more than once, each wound is going to cause them minuses. But it can cause you minuses too. Wounds cause you minuses. So when you get them, you'll get a minus to what you're doing. There might be a minus to your dice roll, is what I'm saying, right? So now your dice rolls will have a minus with that. Now, that is doing a skill and doing it like doing action. And that's the different types of NPCs. Then there's a thing called bennies. I told you about hero points with James Bond 007. Hero points are just things to allow you to avoid something. So the game says the outcome is death for your character. Hero point, I avoid death. Or you take damage. Oh, hero point, no damage. You get so many hero points to automatically avoid things. Bennies are that. So Benny points are the same thing. You're going to die. Nope. Use a Benny. You're going to take damage. Nope. Use a Benny. No, I don't. So Bennies are to avoid that. Now, initiative. It goes on cards and not dice. So you have a deck of cards, and there's the 4 suits. The game values suits in a certain order. I believe it's hearts that are at the top, right? So when you go to do initiative, players and the game master all draw, right? Whoever gets the highest card wins. But what if you and another guy got 7, each both 7? So say you both got queens, and queen's the highest card that has been drawn between you and another player. Well, then it goes down to the value of the suits. So if you drew a queen of hearts and the other player drew a queen of clubs, hearts is more valued by the game. So your Queen of Hearts is considered higher and more valuable than the Queen of Clubs, for example, right? Or Spades, whatever. Either way, you get to go first. That's what it says. So it's a guarantee of not getting tied to figure out initiative. So initiative is based on using cards, draw, and whatever card you draw tells you your order for the round coming up. And now you can stick with the order, or you can redo the draw every round. There you go. Now I hope that makes sense as best. There is some soaking rules, but I'm not going into further rules that are unnecessary. I just wanted to give you an idea of how you use skills, how you do attacks, the different kinds of NPCs, and how you do the initiative system. And I've even explained bennies within that. I hope that makes at least some common sense. That's how you play the game. The 4 thing with the dice is important. You need 4 points to achieve something, right? It can either be 4 points above, say, a defense, like rolling a 7, defense is 3. Well, since you got 7, that's 3 off of 7, leaves you 4. That 4 points means you've wounded the guy, right? And what I meant was if you rolled a 6 and you take 3 off the 6 from his defense, you got 3. It still is a success in combat, but it's not considered wounding. It means you've shaken him up, right? You've somewhat hit him, but you haven't done the blow that takes him out, right? Yeah, that's it. When anybody ever talks to us Black Rose, you get these simple D&D people telling us about how Thaco is hard to understand. I'm like, have you played Savage Worlds yet? No? Holy fuck. Now, Black Rose, it sounds difficult, but once you know the system and you get into playing the game, it works really fast. Like, it's fine. But it's like Thaco, I guess, in that way of it's a bit of a pain to explain it up front because you got to go through these technical things. Once you use it, it's fine. Once you use it, it's like you're good, right? But it's that initial explanation for somebody new to the game that could be a pain. And almost every guy outside of myself that explain it uses lingo that you wouldn't understand. So even when I'm using a little bit of lingo here with the wild cards and all that, I'm giving you an explanation of what that is. When most guys explain that whole system, the worst thing is they use lingo, and lingo has a information behind it that's part of that. If you don't say what the information is, and you're telling that to a person who's never read the game before, next week. So I think I'll be fine. Explain the basics, Thaco. Thaco's so easy to explain compared to what I just explained to you with that. Okay, Thaco's like breathing air. Thaco's so easy, it's silly. It's just there are some games out there that make me blow my mind when I hear D&D people talk about how hard Thaco is, and I'm like, I'm guessing you haven't played too many other games. It's my first time, and there is a little bit of tribalism in the hobby. There are people that only play Traveler and won't play D&D, or the D&D guys don't play Traveler. There is more of that than I wish there was. Because I'm somebody who, I like my D&D gaming, but fuck, I love the other games too. I just don't get stuck pigeonholed into being just a D&D guy. I like Traveler. And I like the different ways of having experience. Like, I like having control with D&D, or having some authority with D&D as a DM, the DM authority. But I like the sort of change, but it's not that really, it's not different from game to game once you understand it. Like, it's like my authority in D&D is there because the game doesn't enforce certain things. And in the game itself, the game doesn't sort of enforce certain things. So I have authority to enforce. And Traveler, in a realistic sense, it's not that different. It's just that the game play, the game makeup already enforces these things. So the required authority from me to tell a player to pay attention doesn't need to, because the pressure in Traveler and the way the player is meant to play that game in that way, it already exists in the way you're going to play the game. Like, you can't even play the game unless you do that. Where in D&D, the way the game plays out, that is not built right into the system. But you still need the player to do that. So how do you handle that in D&D if the game isn't enforcing it itself? that's where you, the DM, have the authority to tell the player to pay attention, to manage that part of the game, right? To have that authority in the game. So in a real sense, it's there in every game, but it's just there differently. But I do like the difference experience. But when you talk to players in Traveler, they'll confuse it. They think, well, the Traveler game master doesn't own the game the way the DM for D&D does. And I'm like, yes, he does. It's the same thing. You don't fucking know. Like you think you have something different here. You really don't. That's what Traveler guys don't understand. There's some difference, but they're overall, in a way, what they call authoritarian, DM in Dungeons and Dragons. I'm like, you guys are stupid, because the same thing is happening with your game. You just don't know it. And even in Traveler, if you read through it, it tells you game master has final say, has final authority on everything. It's like a player can't tell me no in Traveler. And Traveler actually is more enforceable about it. If the Traveler player disagrees with me and I say, no, that's how it is. In Traveler, that's it. That's it. It's more well communicated authority I have over Traveler players. So it is weird to hear Traveler players talk about DMs like they're authoritarian figures. And I'm like, oh, then you're fucking confused, dude. You're fucking confused. It's like if you think that, you don't understand Traveler and you don't understand tabletop role-playing games. Because what you think, there's not much different happening. There's not a lot different happening in D&D. The main difference from D&D to Traveler or most games is it's the lack. Other games don't do the money grabs in the same way. Some of them do, but initially they're not doing money grabs like D&D. Like there's some difference in getting away from some of the wargaming aspects, but realistically, the biggest difference between D&D and say almost every other game is the lack of a proper sandbox explanation. Because with sandboxing, you can run thousands of different adventures, but you never need a module. You never need a pre-made adventure. You do it with the sandbox, it will always produce it for you. And when you read modules, you realize they're produced from guys playing the sandbox with D&D. And they fill things in. And you understand it right away. It's like, dude, the guy who made the module did it from the principle of the sandbox with D&D. He's doing a sandbox. You just need to do the sandbox. You don't need the module. That's what you're getting confused about. Or settings. There's a lot of the games that have, like even Traveler, even before the initial setting they do finally develop before it comes out. Remember, early Traveler has no initial setting. It just gives you a way to build your own setting over and over again. So you can keep putting different worlds in, different things, and what it does is applies you all the things you would need for the different worlds. Here's the different environments. Here's the different type of things you can put in, and you can build that whatever way you want. D&D could do the same thing, but they do settings, and this is what I was trying to tell people, they do settings as a money grab. And when you look at most of the settings, it's basically, you could have had a book that tells you how to build the setting, and then just you place the ideas on it yourself. It's not hard for you to build a setting and say, I'm going to be inspired by feudal Japan and make the samurai one. Most of what you see in the other settings are things that could have been put into like an organized thing to put your own setting together. But it's a money grab. It's making it for you. It's doing the work. I don't know. It's like you going to go play WoW. Instead of you building up a character, you go buy somebody else's character who's already level 20. Like you're paying for nothing. You're paying for something that initially you can do and is actually not hard to do. So that's the money grab trick with D&D, right? The modules and the settings. And that becomes more of a thing with the tournament play. The tournament play, the modules and the settings that's what Gary didn't, they were making a new version of the game, but really what Gary was trying to do is trying to understand how to run a company. See, look at the OSR. We have all these individual designers that can't really call themselves companies or start a company based on their one game, right? Or their few games. Well, how do you be in like an OSR zone? Because it existed back in the day. How do you be in that zone and go from just a guy making a few games to turning it into a company that brings in enough money to pay staff and have a real company. The money grab trick. That's it. That's what makes the market. That's what makes TSR a company. Without modules, and so this is why tournament play was more important than people realize. It wasn't because they cared so much about the tournament play as people think. That's why the tournament play was completely ripped out of it before second edition. We get the second edition, and you know this, Black Rose, there's no tournament play. It's gone. But what did tournament play do? It helped create a system, a money graph system. It figured out that you didn't need the tournament play for the money, but you definitely needed the setting ideas that was coming with it and the modules. And that was money. Problem is, modules somewhat keep selling, but they don't sell that well later. And settings start not selling that much at all, like Birthright. That's a failed money grab. So what did they do for further money grabs to keep the company going? Second edition does its splat books. Instead of doing a Dragon magazine, they do splat books, money grab. All money grab stuff. And the term is correct. That's the correct way to look at it, because what all the other games figured out is, did you need to do modules? No. Sandbox was how you create the adventures. Now, TSR doesn't want you to know that. That's why, again, they redefine sandbox. That's why I tell you it's so important to understand these things if you want to understand the real history here. TSR redefined sandbox into their module on purpose, so they don't got to drop the module, because that's a money grab. Right? They don't want you to know this stuff. That's why when I started realizing the big secret was sandboxing. That was a big secret to eliminating what D&D was putting out there. And you could take the sandbox from Traveller and apply it to any other game and apply it to D&D like Breathing Air, meaning the sandbox was always something that would have worked from D&D from day one, the proper sandbox. And it does work for D&D like Breathing Air, because it fits. It's made for the sandbox. But imagine you're not going to be taught about the sandbox if you only play D&D. And on top of that, you're going to have to depend on the company to get adventures. What a good scam. They don't educate you about the sandbox. And that's why they redefined it. But they don't educate you about the sandbox, and they do that on purpose. They don't want you to know. They don't even want to use the term early. They waited to use the term when they finally started saying sandbox. Now, you'll hear in this explanation for this game, it will say using sandbox elements, even though it talks about plots, because plots are something you never put into a sandbox initially. You develop it into the thing. Though Savage World prefers to have plots before you start. So what does it say? It uses elements of sandboxing. Because if you're using a plot initially before you start, you're not doing a proper sandbox. And Savage World designers understood that. They understood by putting a plot initially up front, that's not a sandbox. A sandbox is complete freedom for the players. They are the ones that lead the game, and you develop the plot based on what they do. Not they. You start with a plot and they walk into it. But that was the big secret I figured out. And I've been trying to explain that to people, but when you get people that are religious about the game, and then here's Black Rose. You want to know why so many guys are stuck to AD&D 1E? I'll tell you the truth. Since it's just us here. This is the real truth. This is not me trying to put them down. I told you about pacing, traveling, and how you have to do pacing in the game, like say pacing with the tune scenes, you do your comedy right, and all this. All that stuff is too hard for casual people to do. So understand, when I say about the hobbyists, these games are only made not so much for all the players have to be hobbyists, but for sure. So the designers somewhat expect some casual people to be playing. They expect somebody of high stature to be running the game. So it's made for that purpose. Now, imagine you can't think outside the box and you're not creative. What would you do if you weren't creative and you wanted to pretend? But you know the role of game master is well respected in the hobby. How would you be a game master if you don't have none of this? Well, what was tournament play made for? Tournament play is made for a store to sell the game. So the store owner could run the game even if he sucked at it, but you wouldn't be aware. How would the store owner get away with doing that if he doesn't know much about D&D? He's not really good at it. He runs it raw, which is going to be suggested to him for tournament play, right? Then he's given a pre-made adventure. So he doesn't have to be creative. He doesn't have to make an adventure, and he runs it right out of the book. So it's a way for him to mask his lack of being able to actually be a DM. He's going to pretend to be one in the store with tournament play to sell the game. And to make tournament play a little bit more unique, they made a big issue about making sure players didn't run into things, because they figured even if the DM sucks, but they're covering it up, players coming into the hobby might expect more. So they expect some realism. If they're going to play in a tournament, they can't. If you ran to a dungeon the other guys ran into, why would it be restocked? Right. So these were elements put in, but all you have to do as a DM is just follow the elements. And that means you don't got to be an actual dungeon master, a proper dungeon master to run tournament play. But imagine a bunch of guys that are casual guys that can't run these games properly. Took that home. So they go home and they pitch raw. Now, it makes no sense when you read what Gary actually says about DMs. A proper DM is what? King. Well, he's not talking about, like, if you run it raw, what is happening? The book is king. Right? And that's a store owner pretending to be a DM. And that's just to cover his ass so he can sell the game at the store. And the company wants him to sell the game at the store. Remember, this is all money grab stuff. But imagine if you had a bunch of very casual people wanting to pretend to be dungeon masters. They would take this method home. Run it raw. Book is king, not DM at that point. Right? Run the pre-made adventure made for them. They don't understand sandbox, and they don't have the creativity to make an adventure to begin with. So imagine second edition comes out, and it doesn't have these elements. Meaning, to run second edition, you have to be an actual DM who's actually creative and can't depend on raw, as the book even points out. You don't worry about raw, you don't do this, the book's not king. Notice these guys that aren't real DMs, they don't just hate second edition, they can't cross over. Like, they can't. That's the big issue. Why do you think these guys didn't understand sandboxing when I put out my video? They'll say they play old school games. Did they really? Could any of them run Traveler? Could any of them run anything outside of AD&D 1E? They're not nostalgic and they just like AD&D more than anything. They have no choice. They can't run second edition. That's the issue. That's the big secret. And I try not to overly bust them on this, but I personally know this because I sat down with guys that are just dead honest with me. They can't run second edition. They can't even run Beckme right. They run AD&D 1E. Now, some OSR games that are made with AD&D 1E will stick to these principles so the guys can cross over and run them. But they're still running them with all pre-made stuff. Now, imagine the OSR designers are also guys that suck, and they make games like here, RPG Pundit. He makes his games. Go listen to his gaming sessions. He has a few of them on this French guy's channel, right? Not even on his own. And you listen, you're like, it's one of the worst things I've ever heard. Like, this guy does not know how to run a game. And you realize, well, you're a history major. That's good. At least you're somewhat intelligent about another topic. But you can't run the game outside of AD&D 1E. Can you, Pundit? You can't run second edition. You can't run Star Frontiers. You can't run Traveler. You can't run Pendragon. Shit, you couldn't even do the comedy with Toon. No wonder you're all stuck with AD&D 1E, because you all pretend to be something you're not. And it lets you cover your ass. It's just a second edition. You can't cover your ass. You need to be an actual DM. Because what does Gary say about a real dungeon master? The DM is king. What am I saying to you that in description fits? With a module DM, that's why I use that term, module DM, is what I describe them as. The book is king. Huge difference, right? The book is king. The book is king. So that doesn't fit what Gary would say. How could if you're running it raw, like the bros, these are another fake group of guys, like the bros, if you run it raw and you're running modules, what's raw? What does raw mean to run it raw? The book is king. How can you be king if the book overrules you? Why do you think the rule lawyers they talk about, the ones that cause issues, only exist in AD&D 1E? The hobby trumpet, their marketing was deliberately aimed at non-players because they don't believe it would have any effect or on the experienced ones. Small end of the trumpet. I mean, I sort of give it to them. I understand like the majority of people, like it was hard to get a lot of people to run games. Here's the problem we would have had back in the old school. And I get what you're saying there, Craig, but here's the problem we would have had back in the old school at D&D. If you needed real DMs, there wasn't enough. So that's another issue. Second edition, though, broke the mold because second edition was able to produce real DMs. And this is why I keep putting those videos that say second edition finally figured out the secret. It did what the other games didn't do. It did it in a way that OD&D and BECME failed to do. See, if you check out the history of OD&D and BECME, the problem is they end up getting a surplus of players with barely any DMs. But if you're not from the old school era, you won't actually know that. It's not like they brag about this reality. Most people don't know what I just told you. So they had a big issue with this. AD&D, with the casual tournament play mindset, was to get more people running it as well. That's part of being able to the casual guys that are being used this way are PlayStations. They're there just to run the game in that way. But let's see. Game Workshop called it a hobby trumpet. Their marketing is deliberately aimed at non-players because they don't believe it would have any effect on the experienced ones. It's just, yeah, true. But you have to wonder, like, what happened? Second edition figured out the secret sauce. They did what OD&D and BECME and 1E could not do. They produced DMs. The problem with third edition went right back to OD&D and BECME's issue. 3E only succeeded better than 4E and 5E for one reason. The majority of their DMs were guys that learned to DM with second edition. Why do you think they used the splat book stuff from second edition? You think they're trying to get AD&D 1E guys? Third edition, what was third edition when you really looked at it? It gets rid of fake, but what does it do? Feats from second edition. Tieflings from second edition. They did draw a lot of 2E DMs over to run third edition. Third edition in itself could not produce those DMs. That's why third edition was only here for a short time. Isn't it weird? OD&D here for a short time and gone. BECME here for a short time and gone because it's not producing DMs. This is what's killing the editions. You guys are learning this. I know this stuff really deeply, right? OD&D caves in, can't produce DMs. BECME can't produce enough DMs. AD&D cheaply produces these fakes. Second edition finally figures it out, produces the amount of DMs you need to actually take care of players. That's why second edition goes active for almost slightly over 20 years. More than any edition before or since. Third edition only has a bit more success because of 2E DMs. Doesn't produce it itself. If you only put 3E out without 2E DMs, third edition is dead in the water. has the same issue, can't produce. 4E instantly caves in because almost no DMs are produced. So the edition goes away, not because it was sucking at sales. It sold a lot, to be honest. No active gaming. Almost none compared to the amount of players. So that kills it right away. Cannot draw DMs over, doesn't know how to produce them at all. 5E used a few techniques to get DMs over, but they go back to the AD&D 1E thing, the module DM gimmick. So 5E handholds the guy running the game, so you don't get to be creative. You can be a mindless twat and run 5E. That's the big. I went and ran 5E just to find out. You could be the dumbest guy in the room and run 5E. And so they went back to the AD&D 1E trick. Second edition, guys, like especially with me and you, Black Rose, it is more unique of an edition than anybody will ever give it credit for. It produced the right amount of DMs, and the secret sauce has never been. It wasn't there before. It was never copied since. Here's the issue. Here's the big issue. Second edition, because of the cheap thing with the DMs, had its edition war with 1E. And TSR couldn't stay around. 3E and WotC wanted more money. They went to sell more products. Selling the product became more important than getting the game right. Second edition is what happens when you go to the peak of the hobbyist thing and get it right. But it doesn't mean it's going to produce a market in the way that you want. But it was more stable. It's something so special, most people don't realize just how fucking special second edition is. They don't realize it. And I get they don't realize it. So we have in the D&D world, the bullshit world of things. And that's why most of the games outside of D&D fail, because the truth is Traveler couldn't produce many. It couldn't get an audience. And then even as it gets an audience, it can barely produce people to run it. Pendragon barely produced people to run it. And if you look at the money those guys made, never enough for a company. Pendragon was made like an OSR game was made. The designers get a bit of money. That's it. Not a company. World of Darkness did the money grab gimmick. Plenty made a bunch. They just didn't do the money grab gimmick like D&D. World of Darkness did. If you check out how World of Darkness puts out expansions, it's all money grab. But it's money grab in a good way. They do it better. They did a better job on the money grab because the meaningful expansions weren't just throwaway things. Like they had a whole idea start where they only put it so much on purpose, where they had so much more to put out later. So they understood the money grab thing right away and just said, let's not put out everything in one thing. Smart move. Get creatives and keep coming up with money grabs. That's World of Darkness. Money grabs, they go into the video games later. It's all money grab, money grab, money grab. World of Darkness is the only other system to do it in a way that TSR did, but their company is much smaller. Still smaller. Doesn't have like a building to go to type of thing usually. They've had places they've rented out. Smaller in company size, but they did money grab. Wizards of the Coast went modules, went third-party adventures, went miniatures too. Miniatures was another big thing for money grab and making them plastic. But they had the card game. They had all kinds of tricks, but it was money grab tricks, all money grab tricks. Money grab, money grab, money grab. But you realize the TTRPG market overall isn't as big as people ever want it to be. That's why you don't have the OSR company. That's why Shadow Dark can't become a company. That's why World of Darkness still only has so many people they can hire, but in a real sense, they're not like a major company. That's why Paizo is a group that can rent out a building, but they're not a company the way Wizards of the Coast is a company. And even Wizards of the Coast is barely a company without the cards and miniatures now. Games Workshop is more like an online company that can do certain things, still minimal. But they do wargaming. So they have many more things to grab money on. right? So you got to money grab. Wargaming was really good at this, and this is where Gary gets his money grab ideas. People don't realize wargaming came up with the whole money grab gimmick, the additional armies, the pieces you got to buy. It's a money grab, so even though they weren't huge, they didn't have a huge hobby. They had a huge production line to keep getting money out of their guys. That's how they could stay alive and keep making stuff. Warhammer, money grab. I call it money grab for this reason, guys, before I get into the coverage. Is because most of the money grab stuff, you don't need it. That's why I call it money grab. Like the adventures, sandboxing, you don't need the modules. You don't need the money grab. Now, I try not to bust everyone's ass out there in public, but I just told you guys in detail. Why haven't I said all this in public in detail? Well, first off, they'd be very unhappy with me. I know too much. I know too much because I was there and I actually talked to Gary. I talked to Dave Arneson when he was alive. I talked to Frank Metzner in person. I talked to Gary in person. And they tell you this stuff. I had deep conversations at places here when he came to Canada. Like I got out to the province where he was in Ontario, met him, talked to him for, man, I think at one of the things he went to, I probably talked to him one-on-one just for 6 hours, just me and Gary. And then on Dragon's Foot, on the question thing, at one point I did a thread of probably like 100 questions with him. Gary told me everything, especially when he was out of the company at one point. He's on Dragon's Foot telling me everything. I wish people would have paid more attention to my conversation with him, but if you have to count my 6 hours with him too. That's the deeper part of the conversation. That's where I really found shit out about the hobby and the secrets and the wargaming and the money grabbing. And him admitting to me that, yes, tournament play was to make casual people that can't run the games be able to run them for the sake of having customers try the game. And then being shocked at how easy it was to get the casual people in the hobby that were not capable of running the games to take that method and take it home to pretend to be DMs at home. And they didn't even discover, they didn't know that the modules that they were using for tournament play were going to sell so hot. It's a discovery of them, people taking that home and that becoming a thing. Again, my last statement on this is why these guys stick to AD&D 1E. It's not that they want to, they just have no choice. They have no choice. They're not creative. They can't think. They can't do second edition. They don't hate it the way people think. Because why? Well, when you look at the gameplay, why would you hate second edition compared to first edition? They're just not that different to hate. And what's their excuse? Well, that's not called a demon anymore. But wait, a lot of you are Christians, yeah? You don't like tieflings being used as devil characters, right? Or even as NPCs, yeah? Then why would you care about demons? You don't, do you? Why don't you just tell us the truth? You are not capable of running any other game. Because you're not a real DM. You're not even a real game master in any way. It's the big secret. There you go. Yeah, you guys know. Okay, anyway. I'll do parts here, and it's regular, but this is intimate. Now, you guys control this. You guys are paying me for this member-only stuff. I'm giving you secrets here because this is stuff I wouldn't say in public. So this is the value of paying for my time, right? I give you some of the better deep dive stuff that I know about. And that's very deep because it's not just about D&D. Even for Craig, it's related to all the games outside of D&D. So I'm telling you, like, a deeper all-around story about the whole hobby. That's insider baseball, boys. That's what they call that. And I've known that for a long time. I don't mention that in my content or even on the open streams at all. I hint towards this stuff, but I never describe it. I'm not wrong, and I know it makes sense because it's true. That's all I'll say. I'll let you guys say something if you want to say something. If not, I'm going to jump into fucking Savage Worlds here in a moment. you're satisfied with that. If you have any questions, ask away. You own me for a while. I'm trying to make these valuable. Like I'm not treating, even with just you two in here, I want you to be able to both walk away going, man, if you went to members only with Steven, you'd find out some shit. Opening games in their store for the sake of reason, motivated tournament play. A reason as motivated tournament play. It is just to sell stuff. That's why they got to do it that way. And there's nothing wrong initially. It's when you realize there's very pathetic people in the hobby that will take a gimmick and run home with it. So I wasn't offended by tournament play the way they had it set up, but it was a money grab thing. I'm not even offended by how they do it. Like, they need a market. I get it. And the guys aren't good at business. Like, outside of money grabbing, they're not good at business. And TSR proved that. They're not really great at business. WotC had some better business people. That's it. They did the smart move with plastic miniatures. And that should have been a move. It blows my mind that wasn't a move by TSR. They invested shitloads of money in Birthright. I'm like, why didn't you put that money into plastic miniatures? Why have WotC come up with that eureka on you? Miniatures are obviously popular, even for, and these weren't war gamers that were into miniatures. I mean, miniatures are popular for everyone, even non-war gamers, and that's obvious. They invested shitloads of money into things that were unnecessary. Some of the extra splat books, I don't get. And if you know the money they put in on Birthright and that stuff, it would blow. Dark Sun, Birthright, creative stuff didn't make them the money. They put so much money that when you look at the money that WotC spent to get plastic miniatures, and you look at the money TSR invested in these other things, TSR invested 5 times more into these settings and books than WotC did in getting plastic miniatures. It was plastic miniature move was a fucking genius move. Genius move. And by doing it, they could finally make miniature gameplay more mandatory than optional. That was the big secret. The only way to justify making miniatures more mandatory is to make them affordable. What have I always told you about why Theater of the Mind was the mandatory thing? Because miniatures were not affordable. They could have done this plastic thing the entire time. And if you see the money they invested in Dark Sun and Birthright and some of the extra splat books, it would hurt your brain. You would not even understand why they did that. But that's because they were nerds, and the people that were going to buy them out were partly business people doing the card stuff. Because WotC went and hired real business people when the Magic the Card game became big. So TSR went and hired nerds trying to pretend to be business people, right? And they used Gary. Gary was a genius. They just used Gary's gimmick the entire time. They linked on it even after he was out of the company. But did TSR really hire business people? Not real business people. See, Wizards of the Coast that had the Magic the Card game, they went out of their way to invest. They took a chance. They risked it. And they paid for a couple major guys that were business people, real business people that would have no emotional attachment. No, these were not nerds. They didn't have the emotional attachment to the card game. They wanted guys that were purely there, that had a history of producing money. And they brought them in. And these guys looked at the market right away and said, well, we could make new settings. No, fuck it. We're doing plastic miniatures. And why would they lean into the action? Well, you get nerds at TSR that are like nerds in their own hobby. They want something to work that doesn't work. WotC just says, most people are playing to the action, right? Yeah, okay, our game is going to cater to that. But that's not old school. Doesn't matter. That's what most players want. Yeah, that's what they're doing. Okay, we're catering to that. That's emotional. These are not nerds making the decisions. These are business people. They look at what the majority's doing. What's the majority doing? They doing survival gameplay? No, they're doing action. We play to the action. That's what most people are doing. Ignore the minority's loud voices. Do what the majority wants. Yep, that's what they want. We get the majority. They took over the hobby right away. Nobody can even deny it. WotC came in, stole up. I don't care what game it was. They took everybody's players. They took World of Darkness players, crossed over to 3rd edition. Palladium players crossed over to 3rd edition. Every fucking game's players crossed over to 3rd edition, or at least a portion of them. Most of the D&D crossed over to 3rd. Because guess what? As much as we don't want to admit it, as much as a small group of hobbyists want a deeper game, the vast majority of casual people in the hobby want action. That's it. They want a board game. The majority wants an MMO. No matter what we think, no matter how loud our voices are, that's the real market. And WotC went, we are catering to that, and they won instantly. Fucking just took the hobby. They swept every game right there, and they've owned it since, because they keep catering to that one thing, no matter how much you bitch and complain. And remember, most people in the hobby are left-wing liberals, so leaning into the cultural stuff. It won them actually for a long time. Actually, won people. They weren't pretending to be all communist nothing, but they were like, we'll lean into the acceptance of people. We'll lean into some of this identity politics, because for young people, sadly, and they have a lot of young people that watch Mercer and that, for their younger audience, as much as us older guys don't want to admit it, because with a guy like the conservatives, how'd they win in states? They won because older people were convinced to start voting for Trump. Younger people weren't. Who's the majority in the fucking hobby? Younger people still. Matt Mercer drawing them. We still have younger people. Vast majority of customers. What they do, they play to the identity politics. They win. Now that identity politics is taking a hit, even with the young crowd, this is where you see them taking a minor hit right now. Minor hit. But on business, they've always taken the wisest moves. No matter how stupid we think they look at what they're doing, business-wise, it's fucking perfection. They're just saying. So now you guys know why WotC is doing really well. And I had to accept that truth. See, I wanted to figure out why people were doing a certain thing. So I just get past all this, what I want to be true, and I look at what is true. It's not always what I want it to be, but it is that, right? But you guys seem satisfied. You're not asking questions. Maybe you're busy. Maybe I'm here to perform for you. So are you both ready for Savage Worlds? Just want to make sure. Don't want to start in. It's what you're paying for. So I'm working for you, baby, here. So I want to make sure you're ready. I think Craig's going to be around. I'll make sure Black Rose is around. I don't care if you don't say much, you don't get a chat. As long as you're listening in, you get the game. You get what I give you. I don't know where you're watching me from, on phones or on PCs, or some people watch me on their TVs. I don't know. There's no rush. I'll give you guys a minute. I'm going to have a smoke here. I'm all there, so Craig's in. Okay. Good. Let's go. I'll take that puff. That will be the delay. Okay. Savage Worlds, influences, and birth of the game. Being a bit around, but got a wireless headset so I can listen in. That's, yeah, you don't need to chat. That's just one of the things I want to verify. That's on your TV. That's good. As long as you're both here getting what you're here for, I'm happy. Right? Oh, I hear that. But if you can still hear me, we're good. We're good. I just want to make sure you're not going to miss out on some good stuff, right? So, influences and birth of the game. The origins of Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds was created by Shane Lacey Hensley and released by Pinnacle Entertainment Group in 2003. Note it, Craig. I know you can't do the continuous. That's not a worry. Just making sure you're here. You sit back, get comfortable, dude. That's all you got to do. So Pinnacle Group in 2003, released by Pinnacle Entertainment Group in 2003. The roots of the system go back to the 1990s and begin with another major game. I already told you about Didlands. Didlands, released in 1996. Didlands became one of the standout RPGs of the era because of its unusual blend of Weird West, horror, supernatural fantasy, spaghetti Western influence. That's why I said this is sort of like a cowboy game. Steampunk elements, undead gunslingers, gambling themes, pulp action. The game had enormous personality. Mechanically, it also stood out immediately. Initiative used playing cards, right? Magic system used poker mechanics. Fate chips acted as a form of player meta currency. Exploding dice created sudden dramatic moments. Combat could become brutal very quickly. Oh, and I'll be covering that in the. Remember this. You guys are getting an early bump around. I should be covering Didland first for you, but remember, it's only you get to skip ahead to Savage Worlds. Now, in the public covering, I will be doing Didland, so you will get that at one point. Now, hopefully, I get some interesting information that I can feed you then. Many players love the atmosphere, style, and energy of Didlands, even if some groups found the original rule system cumbersome or overly layered, which is the same as Savage Worlds. That eventually led to a push towards streamlining, what you could say sort of happens with Savage Worlds. The Great Rail Wars connection. One of the most important steps in the birth of Savage Worlds was Didlands, The Great Rail Wars, released in 1997. The Great Rail Wars was a miniature skirmish game set in the Didlands universe. This matters historically because it's used as a faster and more streamlined version of Didlands mechanics. A lot of the DNA people associate with Savage Worlds becomes clearer here. Fast combat resolution, simplified mechanics, miniature-friendly gameplay, quick action scenes, cinematic pacing. Savage Worlds eventually evolved directly out of this streamlined approach. So while Didlands provided the setting, style, and core identity, the Great Rail Wars helped shape the actual mechanical direction that became Savage Worlds. The core design philosophy. Savage Worlds was built around 3 words, and this actually was originally in the title, right? So Savage Worlds isn't just Savage Worlds, it's Savage Worlds Fast, Furious, Fun. That became both the slogan and central design philosophy. The goal was not deep simulation. The goal was energetic gameplay. The system was designed so combat moved quickly, hence the easy NPC knockoff things. Players stayed engaged. Turns resolved fast. Actions felt cinematic. Preparation was easier on the game master. This gave Savage Worlds a very different feel from many heavier RPG systems of the late 1990s and early 2000s. At the time, many RPGs were becoming increasingly rule-heavy. Universal systems often focused heavily on simulation. Some games required large amounts of bookkeeping or character construction time. Savage Worlds aimed for something lighter and faster while still keeping tactical gameplay elements. The wargaming and miniature influence. Savage Worlds also carries strong miniature and skirmish game influence. You can feel this in movement rules, range measurements, templates, tactical positionings, card initiative, and counter pacing. Combat was designed to feel visual and energetic rather than slow and highly procedural. The system leaned heavily into pulp adventure, action movie pacing, Western shootouts, comic book style momentum. This is one reason the game developed a reputation for cinematic unpredictability. Exploding dice and swingy action. One of the defining mechanics of Savage Worlds became its exploding dice system called acing. Any die could continue rolling upward if the maximum value was rolled. This created moments where weak enemies could become dangerous. Heroes could perform incredible feats. Fights could suddenly shift direction. That unpredictability became a major part of Savage Worlds' identity. For some groups, this made the game exciting and tense. For others, it felt overly swingy. But either way, it became one of the system's defining traits. It's like if the dice kept rolling, you didn't miss. Like, okay, we're going to dig into this again. We're going to roll the max. I gave you the example with the wild card dice, but you can do it with any dice, really, for the most part. But mainly, that's where I remember, it hitting often. Right, you rolled your 6, you roll a 6 again. The universal system goal, Savage Worlds was also designed to function as a multi-genre system rather than creating separate engines for every setting. The goal was to build one fast-moving rule set adaptable to many genres. That's why you get we'll try this game with the Savage World. I bet you guys have heard that quite often. Are you using Savage Worlds for that setting or that game? Yeah, because you could adapt a lot of settings and games to the rule set, especially if you preferred action more than, say, the survivability type of factor. You change the gameplay. Over time, the system would support fantasy, science fiction, horror, superheroes, post-apocalyptic settings, pirates, pulp adventure. This flexibility became one of the major reasons the game for the game's long-term success. A group could change genres without completely learning a new RPG engine. The birth of Savage Worlds, in simple terms, the easiest way to understand the birth of Savage Worlds is this. Deadlands established the style, tone, and personality. The Great Rails Wars helped streamline the mechanics. Savage Worlds became the fast, universal action engine built from those ideas. That foundation would define the identity of Savage Worlds for decades afterwards. This is why this game is still used often, talked about often. Like, it's still used now. Like, many people talk about this game all the time. That's why that's another reason I wanted to put this in. I won't lie to you. I'll be honest with you. Part of selling myself as a YouTuber, making members only attractive, was to cover this game because a lot of people like it or have heard about it. It's very popular for that reason, right? So I'm hoping this teases some people that you guys get some inside baseball with a very popular game here, right? So, all right, now we're going to get into my Game Master advice for Savage Worlds. Savage Worlds, how to run it. Understand the pace of the game. The most important thing to understand is Savage Worlds Game Master is, the system depends heavily on momentum. Long pauses, excessive rule debates, or overly cautious play can slow the game down badly. That's not minor. A slight slowness with this game, your whole experience goes away. It is a great concept, but it does have a knife edge on this thing. If this game slows down, it can seem rotten. Like a minor slowdown can start killing the feel. Momentum is vastly important for this to be exciting for what it is, right? As a DM, keep turns moving, resolve uncertainty quickly, encourage players to act decisively. Like, it'd be like it would kill the game if you're going around. It's your turn. What are you doing? That you can understand why some game masters, not just in D&D, in a lot of games, would get really mad about you not being ready. That's why for some games, you feel like you need to have certain players that understand what they're being asked for. My best thing is to talk to players beforehand and get them to buy into this and understand they can't do that. So, like a lot of D&D games, the players don't have that talk. It just gets to their turn, and you're hoping people assume they have to be ready. You can't do that here. So, avoid getting trapped in long mechanical discussions. So, rule warring, no. Question, okay. Answer, move on. Savage Worlds generally works best when the table energy stays high and scenes keep advancing. So, when the scene starts, it has to either go into the talking or the action. When your talk's done, you move on. You do not linger in this one. This is not casual sit around scenes. Scenes are active. Either the game master is putting pressure on to get moving or the players are playing. It depends on that because every scene is going to be similar in that fashion. So you need people that are ready to play, ready to play, ready to play. Look, you're not in a race like on speed or something here, but you can't be dead in the water slow, right? Keep encounters dynamic. One of the biggest mistakes a GM can make in Savage Worlds is running static encounters. The system becomes much stronger when scenes involve movement, changing environments, hazards, shifting objectives, time pressure, chases, interruption, reinforcements, collapsing terrain, civilians to protect, escape situations. Before I go further, what I'm saying is it can't be just you run into the goblins on the road and you fight back and forth. Keeping dynamic means you as a game master are trying to make things happen to make every part of the combat interesting. Something is collapsing, terrain's falling apart while things are happening, civilians are showing up. There's always a reason like, oh shit, oh shit, oh shit. That's what a player should be somewhat experiencing in the scene, right? Like shit's happening. Oh, you only get so much time, it's coming at your face. Like pressure on players as fights going on, scenes changing, something interesting. Oh, you had to save these people. Well, now these people are caught over here too. Oh, they are? What the fuck? Like, it has to be that. It can't be you meet the goblins in the road and you're fighting back and forth. Just not a lot of that. Simple stand in place and trade attack encounters become repetitive quickly in this game. It's not made for it. Savage Worlds combat is usually at its best when the battlefield feels active and unstable. The chaos, the pressure. You want that on purpose. You're looking to get that on purpose. Use extras properly. Understand the difference between extras, wild cards is critical to running Savage Worlds well. Extras are minor enemies. Guards, these are the NPCs, the background NPCs I told you about. Guards, henchmen, background combatants, cannon fodder. They are meant to go down quickly. That's why they have the one moon thing. Wild cards are important villains, major rivals, powerful monsters, player characters. That's why I said the important villains, the boss. I was just using that term to sort of describe the importance. A common GM mistake is making too many enemies into wild cards. Don't do that. If a group has a boss, they have a boss, not 10 bosses. Because that will slow combat down, damages pacing, because then the fight takes too long with too many of these other guys that can do similar things to you. Savage Worlds works best when extras create pressure and action. Wild cards create dramatic danger because they can do similar stuff to you. The system is designed around heroes fighting groups of weaker opponents while still faring major threats. Again, it's like just having the group and their boss is the major threat, right? Possibly you could have like a more supreme guard with him, like a bodyguard. So it doesn't have to be just one guy, but you don't want 4 or 5 of these guys, and you don't want the group to be them. Keep bennies flowing. Bennies are one of the most important pacing engagement tools in the game. New GMs, new game masters, often do not hand them out enough. Bennies should circulate regularly. Reward players for creative ideas, entertaining role play, bold actions, clever problem solving, strong character moments. Why? Well, because experience points is not coming to them the same way, and this is a good incentive to get the gameplay out of them. You do want creative ideas. You do want entertaining role play. You do want bold actions, clever problem solving, strong character moments. You want players seeking them out to get these bennies, and the bennies are valuable to keeping them alive and letting them avoid shit. So it's a very powerful incentive. So it really works. Sell your bennies well on this. Give them out. Don't be tight, but make them earn them. So it is an incentive to earn them. The game becomes noticeably more energetic when players feel encouraged to take risks. That's the point of the bennies. If bennies are too rare, players often become overly cautious and the game loses much of its momentum. It's not meant to be a slow-paced game. Some games are slower paced than this. This is not one of them. And remember, the action here is heavy and going. So it's not like old school where you have a fight every so often. No, action is pretty consistent. Don't obsess over encounter balance. Savage Worlds is not built around perfect encounter balance because of exploding dice. Weak enemies can become dangerous. Strong enemies can fail suddenly. Combat outcome can shift rapidly. Trying to perfectly calculate every encounter often wastes preparation time, and you can't do it because you cannot know how the dice are going to roll. Instead, focus on interesting situations. This is where it's making the scene interesting. The collapsing thing, the thing happening. So even if the fight falls apart, crazy shit's happening anyway. So interesting situations, memorable environments, pacing being important, pressures, objectives, complications. The system usually benefits more from dramatic situations than mathematical precision. It's just because the enemies might have went down doesn't mean the building's not falling down, right? That's pretty much, I think, in a way they're sort of pitching them. But I mean, I count them as hero points to a degree, but they use them in this different way. Hero points are meant just to let you not just die so easily like a Bond character, where Benny's is, hey, it's okay to hand these out like candies because it's being used for specific gameplay that benefits the game. So to get, it's an incentive to get players to play. But yeah, good call, Craig. Good call, Craig. Use conditions, pressures, and positioning. New Savage World GMs sometimes focus almost entirely on damage, but much of the system combat depth comes from shaken results, test, support actions, gang up bonuses, positioning, suppressive pressures. Enemies do not always need to deal massive damage to become dangerous. They can work in groups, right? So there are ways for the NPCs to effectively do stuff to you. Don't underestimate that. NPCs can pin characters down, distract them, separate the party, create pressure for the more stronger NPC, right? Force movement, like break up, support stronger allies. Combat tends to become far more interesting when opponents behave tactically instead of simply attacking every round. So, like the idea here is even if you can take down the NPCs really well, if they work well with their boss character and they're doing things to effectively help him by breaking you up, by separating you, by putting pressure on you, suddenly you're not going to have an easy time with him. Now he can do shit to you, right? Craig's brilliant. You're right. You're 100% right on that. But yes, very brilliant. Very brilliant. Use quick encounters and dramatic tasks. Savage Worlds includes tools specifically designed to avoid turning every situation into full tactical combat. Quick encounters are useful for travel hazards, escapes, minor fights, infiltration, dangerous journeys, survival situations. Dramatic tasks are excellent for scenes involving stopping rituals, defusing explosives, escaping disasters, repairing vehicles, surviving storms, hacking systems, completing objectives under pressure. These mechanics help the game maintain pacing while still allowing tension and risk. A GM who uses these tools well can keep sessions moving quickly without every challenge becoming a long battle map encounter. So it's you don't have to turn everything into these things, right? But it is like smaller encounters, like having some NPCs run up on you to cause issues, where encounters are not always meant for you to lose at all. It's meant to create momentum, a feel. So it still cares about a bit of a feel, but it's ironically using action to do it, but not always using action where that action is meant for it to be a fight that you can't win. The fight you can win in many cases, unless things you're unlucky or they're doing gang up. But outside of that stuff, a lot of these smaller encounters can be ones where you're meant to basically win, but it's going to create action, other little things, maybe environmental risk, push situations, make it interesting. Let the system become unpredictable. Savage Worlds is intentionally swingy. Exploding dice can create shocking victories, sudden injuries, dramatic reversals, unlikely successes, even on your opponent's side, unexpected failures. Trying to completely smooth this out usually weakens the experience. The unpredictability is part of what gives the game tension. Players should feel the situation and change quickly, meaning no matter what the game intends here, you can lose to the NPCs through the dice rolling. It can become that chaotic. That the designers still want that threat to be something. Where no matter how much it's like, oh, they think I'm going to kick ass. Well, that can turn on in a moment. In a moment. So you could lose your characters, you could die, you could fail, all this really like in a heartbeat, right? With unexpectedly. Now the numbers don't really work out that way, but the way certain things can happen if mistakes are made, that can happen. It's just going to happen. You allow that unpredictability to be there. The biggest GM skill in Savage Worlds, more than anything else, running Savage Worlds well is about maintaining momentum. Remember what I said, if you slow this game down too much, what the game designers intend and how good the game can be, you do harm it. Like you really, really do harm it. Sorry, dropped something, made some noise. Good Savage Worlds game masters keep scenes moving, create active encounters, apply constant pressure, encourage player creativity, avoid unnecessary slowdown, embrace unexpected outcomes. When the game feels fast-moving, tense, and energetic, Savage Worlds is usually functioning the way it was designed to function. Some really good game master advice. I mean, I ran this quite a few times. There's nothing else I got to say there. Because I'll say so much during the setting part that I'd be overkilling on some parts. That's just the way you use the bennies is really important for the players to play a certain way. The way you do the scenes, like having things collapse, having actions, having people walk into them, that you want to make that consistent. Then using little threats like NPCs coming out of nowhere while you're trying to do something, causing shit for you. Right? It's savage. It's meant to be sort of crazy and unsafe. It doesn't mean every moment of the game is an encounter, but it's like, say during travel, you do this, oh, then you get that small encounter. You do this, small encounter. Do this and do this, small encounter. That's where the game can become savage and crazy. Deadlands is meant to somewhat give you the same feel a bit. Similar stuff. But that's some good game master advice. The Benny stuff is brilliant. I do like it. I get that you cut on, Craig, but that's sort of what it is. It is like meant to be a drug. Get you high, get you moving forward, get you on speed. It's meant to be that way. Okay, Savage Worlds character creation. Fast character creation is part of the design. One of the defining features of Savage Worlds is character creation is generally quick and easy to understand compared to many heavier RPG systems. Players can usually build characters without a large amount of bookkeeping, long chains, complicated mathematical planning. The system was designed to get players into the game quickly while still allowing a wide variety of character concepts. The core of your character, attributes and skills. Characters in Savage Worlds are primarily built around attributes and skills, edges, hindrances. The system uses die types to represent capabilities. We talked about this. D4, D6, D8, D10, D12. Higher die types generally represent greater competence and better odds of success. As you know, you need 4. So if you have a D4, that's very low. If you have a D12, your chances of hitting the 4, if not higher, is quite higher. So it is telling you if you got a D12 at something, you're very good at that. If you got a D4, you're not so good at that thing. So for example, an expert shooter may have a shooting of D10. An inexperienced character may only have a D4. This makes character ability easy to understand at a glance. So you know right away if you got a D4. Well, You got the skill, but you suck at it, right? Hindrances are a major part of the character's identity. One of the defining features of Savage World character creation is hindrances. These are flaws, weaknesses. Just my jaw problem. I can't say that word pretty well, but it's. I know you'll know the word, but it is a jaw problem. This is one where I just cannot pronounce it because my jaw is crooked. So I'll just paste it in here. Just being real. It's a word I wish I could say, but there's a few words I have issues with like that. You guys know this. These are flaws, weaknesses, obligations, fears, injuries, habits, or personality problems that help shape the character. Examples include greedy, curious, loyal, vengeful, one-eye, enemy, phobia, bad luck. Hindrances are not simply penalties for extra points. In many campaigns, they become major drivers of personality. So it just, they're flaws and weaknesses, but they're also part of helping you know who your character is. And then it's something, it's easier for you to know what to role play instead of just making it up, right? So in a way, it's a weakness. In a way, it's something you'll know about your character and should tell you a lot about your character in a general sense, right? Or someone with bad luck might have a personality based on failing all the time. A phobia, they're scared of certain things, right? So that would tell you a little bit of who they might be. So it's the idea of giving you an answer to a question, but that answer should tell you a lot through assumption and everything else. So many campaigns, they become major drivers like personality, role play, character decisions, party tension, story complications. Savage World characters often feel distinct very quickly because hindrances immediately establish recognizable strengths and weaknesses. Again, it's an answer to a single question, maybe, but then you can assume a ton of stuff based on it, right? And you know you'll fill the gaps yourself, but this is a game that wants you to. They want you to play your assumption. They want you to fill gaps. So it's an easier way for you to put together who your character is in your mind faster. You'll naturally do it, so why not take advantage of the fact that humans do this anyway? I give you a single answer, kaboom, right? You start filling in gaps. Edges define specialization. Edges are one of the primary ways characters become mechanically unique. They function as talents, advantages, combat techniques, professional expertise, social advantages, supernatural training. Different edge combinations allow players to create very different character types. A player might build a deadly gunslinger, a battlefield leader, a martial artist, an inventor, a scholar, a survivalist, an arcane caster, without relying on strict class structure. So they're not classes, but in a way, you're going to design what you are in that way. It's like making your own kits without a class underlying, right? Classless, but still familiar. Savage Worlds is technically classless. There are no mandatory classes like fighter, wizard, cleric, rogue, but recognizable archetypes still emerge naturally through skills, edges, scare, powers, attribute focus. So in a way, instead of calling yourself one thing, you're going to design something that you can label. This gives players flexibility while still making familiar fantasy, Western, horror, or science fiction roles easy to create. The setting strongly shapes character creation. Although Savage Worlds uses universal core system, the setting being played has a major impact on character creation. Different settings may introduce unique edges, special hindrances, races or ancestries, powers, technology, professions, supernatural systems, setting rules. A character made for Deadlands will usually feel very different from a fantasy adventurer, a pulp hero, a science fiction operative, a superhero. Remember, Deadlands is the setting. So I say that, but I'm not talking about the game. I'm talking about the setting because it is Deadlands. So again, a character made for Deadlands will usually feel very different from a fantasy adventurer, a pulp hero, a science fiction operative, a superhero. Even though the same core mechanics are underneath, this flexibility become one of the defining strengths, or is one of the defining strengths of Savage Worlds. Character competence starts early. Savage World characters are usually capable from the beginning of play. Even novice characters can contribute meaningfully, survive dangerous situations, succeed dramatically, influence important encounters. This gives the game a different feel from systems where early level characters may spend long periods of time feeling ineffective or fragile, like in D&D, Dungeons and Dragons. Advancement is steady rather than extreme. Characters improve through advances, which may allow them to raise skills, improve attributes, gain new edges, expand their effectiveness. As characters progress, they usually become broader and more capable, while still remaining vulnerable enough for dangerous and unpredictability to matter. So all that stuff I told you about, like the gang ups, the things NPCs can do to you, in many ways, no matter how good you're getting at skills and everything else, you're still someone who can have all that done to you. So it's like you're becoming more capable and you can kick a little bit more ass, but you can still be taken down. That's the sort of balance there of upgrading so you can kick a little bit more ass faster and better, but it doesn't mean the tricks still don't work on you. Right? Get it? So character identity comes together quickly. One thing Savage Worlds often does very well is helping players establish a strong character identity early between hindrances, skills, edges, gear, setting specific options. Players can usually create characters that feel distinct without requiring enormous mechanical complexity. That combination of speed, flexibility, and strong character identity has become one of the major appeals of the system. Character creation. So hindrances are flaws, edges are bonuses, and through these flaws and bonuses, it helps you come up with an idea early on who your character is. Through the edges, you can improve. You improve rate, like their benefits, but as you improve, you get more hindrances. Your skills can go up on the dice, so your gameplay with the character can advance. But the same thing that threatened you before the advancement of those things still threatens you. Get it? Like it's all the same gimmicks still work against you. It just might be harder for the NPCs to get to you now that you can do better things. You can kill them even faster, have more options, better weapons. So effectively, you can take them down better in ways as you're improving. But they can still get to you. And you can always do that with a villain too. Even if you meet up with a villain that doesn't die right away, they can improve. You can improve them, right? Okay. I mean, I like the game. I want you guys to know this. I'm not just giving you a game that's no good. I think you both would enjoy the game in many ways, as players for sure. As players, especially if I was running this, because I can do all this stuff, right? You'd have fun making characters. It's pretty fast. You come up with the ideas. I know you're creative guys, and then boom. I finally remember disadvantages and traits from AD&D Second Edition, the Skills and Powers book. I know many didn't play as black books any heed, but I did. Well, it's not that people didn't use the black books. It's just that they were more selective in what they did with them, right? So it's traits and skill, or traits, disadvantages and traits. I knew quite a few people that use them, but they be picky, right? Sounds alike, I think is what you're saying. But yeah, I mean, I personally didn't use them. Were a big issue to me. But that's the thing, Black Rose. I would say I like Second Edition for what it was. So it wasn't that I didn't see other people use certain specific things like that. I only used things I thought enhanced what the game was, like kits. So I get what you did. I didn't want to change the experience with the game. But to me, if I want that experience, I go run Savage Worlds. It's like there's certain things I did in Traveler I wouldn't do in D&D. You could do in D&D, but I wouldn't. I used the pressures for sandboxing, but outside of that, I like to play the different systems. Sound like we like the system. Oh, I think you both would a lot. You got to have a person like me who's going to do all these small, like the game master advice I gave you. If a game master is doing that stuff, it's great because you both could be creative and play the game. And I know you go after the Benny, so I know you and Craig would be fine with this. You'd love this game. But to make this game sing, you just need a game master that isn't skipping the stuff. That's the big secret of this game. It's not hard to get players to play, especially players like yourself, but it's not hard to get a lot of players to play this game in a certain way. It's the big secret of this game is the game master has to do the shit. Right? You can't have them skip it or being half-assed with what they do. They put one extra thing into a scene, you won't get much out of that. If I put all the extra things into the scene appropriately, it's going to feel exciting and fun and crazy. And you're going to like it. And I know you like a little bit of action, Black Rose. I know that from your own experience with second edition. So this is the type of action you really would enjoy. And even a guy like Craig in slower games, I think you both would like slower games if the game is meant to give you that. Like, it's like, I think you both would like Bushido if I ran Bushido, right? That's a slower game. But that's meant to be a slower game. It's just meant to be a different experience. I think you both would enjoy it. But I think you both, for different reasons, would enjoy this game. I get the thing you were saying about second edition, but the reason I don't always worry about adapting certain things is I never ran one game. I always felt like if I wanted to do something different, that game took care of it. Or if I want to do this, that game took care of it. Action. Fuck the world. This game does this. This game brings it to you. Oh, yeah, and that's the thing. Remember I told you, Craig, what I told you about action is really true. So I do apply this concept in all games. The faster action is, the more you feel it. It's something a lot of guys don't really understand. That's why I would get on the little rules, like get this out of your thing out of your rule, get this layer out. They were like, well, why is it a big issue? I'm like, dude, I know it sounds minor, but the speed factor, you feel it. And the more you feel it, the more that's fun. Feeling it is fun. That's because feeling it isn't just an MMO game anymore. Feeling action that's fast is like being in the world, because action is fast. You make it exciting. You make action exciting, and then action's not boring. If it's in like D&D, hit, miss, hit, and you're very paced to the fight, and there's layers in front of you like 5e. 5e people have no idea how better the experience is if you took off 50% of what they're doing. They have no idea just how valuable it is to get rid of that because they like the game MMO. I'm like, old school people like the experience. And they'll be like, well, what we're doing is experience. That's not what I mean. You like to go kick some ass with your characters and always look great and they're like, yeah. I'm like, we don't care if we lose. They're like, huh? As long as we had fun. Well, how can you have fun losing? Oh man, the fight was crazy. It didn't matter that I died. It mattered that it was fucking crazy and fun and exciting. And once you feel it, that's why I've had players all the years I've ran for. Every time they've lost a character, it's exciting. Honest fuck, I wish I could bring some players on. I could definitely bring Trevor on. Trevor would tell you, he'd be like, every character death is fucking one of the funnest things you can do in his game. Even though it sucks to lose the character. He's lost characters he loves. But he's like, he doesn't regret the fight scene because it was action. He felt it. It was exciting. It didn't matter that it came to the end. Because the experience was more important than that factor in it, right? And it's a real thing. And see, what a lot of guys don't know that just hear about this, they assume negative. I'm like, you actually have to do it and go through it to know that it's not negative. But if you don't go through it, you can't know. I can tell you, you can assume it won't be good. You got to go through it. Go through it, and then you're like, that's what he fucking means. That is what I fucking mean. All right. You guys don't mind me. Like, I don't smoke during these things, but since we're intimate here and I tell you guys are enjoying this, I'll be smoking through this. I'm sorry. But I'm giving you guys a lot more time in inside secret stuff. I don't talk about my content or my streams. I'm purposely doing this because this is what the extra bit is for if you fucking take care of me and you help me with things like paying for the stuff online. This is what a lot of this stuff will do, right? It allows me to do some other things online to grow the channel and pay for certain things on here where it doesn't have to cost me out of my paycheck when I'm getting extra money from this stuff. That really is valuable to me. Well, I appreciate it. It's not everybody in the audience does, but where it's intimate with you guys like this, I don't think I'm insulting. And plus, it's coming with a good package of stuff, right? Inside baseball, we're doing games I'm not supposed to be covering right away. And good games, very good games. Okay, here we go. Setting and worlds. The Savage Worlds, settings and worlds. Savage Worlds was built to support many genres. One of the defining strengths of Savage Worlds is its flexibility across different settings and genres. As you guys know, this is why you hear about Savage Worlds being used with all of these different games. Like I run the thing with Palladium using Savage Worlds. Or I run the D&D setting, Dark Sun. You can use Savage Worlds for everything. Oh, I hear you. I hear you. At least I only smoke now. I've given up the whole pot thing. So I think Craig might actually still puff. I'm not sure, but I've given up. At least I only smoke now, so we're good. Rather than being tied to a single world, the system was designed to support fantasy, horror, westerns, science fiction, pulp adventures, superheroes, post-apocalyptic settings, pirates, weird fiction, and more. Pretty much everything, guys. That's why it covers everything. The same core mechanics remain recognizable across settings, but the experience can change dramatically depending on the world being played. This flexibility became one of the major reasons Savage Worlds developed such a large variety of official and licensed settings. Deadlands, the flagship Savage Worlds setting. The setting most strongly associated with Savage Worlds is Deadlands. Deadlands combines westerns, horror, supernatural fantasy, undead creatures, mad science, occult magic, alternate history into what became known as the Weird West. Deadlands is deeply important to Savage Worlds historically because much of the system's identity grew out of it. The setting helped establish many elements people strongly associate with Savage Worlds: dangerous action, explosive combat, supernatural conflict, cinematic momentum, larger-than-life characters. Even after Savage Worlds became a universal engine, Deadlands remained a flagship setting. Really is. It's a well-loved setting. Settings can change the experience dramatically. Although Savage Worlds uses one core rule engine, different settings can feel very different during play. For example, a fantasy campaign may focus on magic and exploration. A horror setting may emphasize survival and fear. A sci-fi game may focus on ranged combat and technology. A superhero campaign may become highly power-driven. A pulp adventure setting may focus on fast-moving, serial-style action. Savage Worlds settings often introduced unique edges. So it's like the idea of second edition getting the kits or the extra material. So when you would do extra stuff for unique settings, you get like new edges, new setting rules, special powers, technology changes, really cool stuff, right? New races or ancestries. 1 second, genre-specific mechanics. This allows the settings to strongly shape gameplay without requiring an entirely new RPG system. Did Fortnite borrow from this game? I wouldn't be surprised. Because when you look at it trying to adapt everything, you look at Savage Worlds, and Savage Worlds is a game system made to adapt everything. Be shocked. I wouldn't be shocked to be seeing Savage Worlds Fortnite, or even the other way around, Fortnite Savage Worlds. I think you could do both. I think I actually mean that, Craig. I'm not joking. I don't know for sure with the Fortnite thing. I'll be real with you. I've not really played Fortnite. I know a bit about it, but given that Fortnite adapts everything, could both games on both ends, could you do a TTRPG Fortnite with this? From what I've seen, yeah, you could. Could you do Fortnite with this, given like say the Didlands and some of the stuff the Didland setting is set? Yeah, for sure. I don't really know enough about Fortnite to know that, Craig, for sure. So I'm just being real with you. I wish I had a clear answer on that one for you, but I don't know. But you might know. So if it sounds like it fits, sometimes if it sounds like it fits, sometimes it fits, right? I wouldn't be surprised if it just outright is influential. That would make sense to me. This, Savage Worlds was around before this was Fortnite. Savage Worlds works especially well with action-oriented genres because it is about action. Savage Worlds has historically performed especially well with settings built around. Not a fan at all. I love more gritty. I like Rust and DayZ. I like Arma. I especially like Arma and DayZ. I like more gritty. Rust is sort of in the vein of that. I don't like the Fortnite running around. I do like to sort of take your time, build things up. I mean, for some people playing games, they'd rather the quick run through deathmatch. To me, that can be boring. I like the danger around every corner, building your base. You know what I mean? Hiding out at night. Shit, I like that. I just like it. Savage Worlds has historically performed especially well with settings built around pulp adventure, dangerous exploration, war stories, supernatural conflict, weird horror, fast-moving action. The mechanics naturally support active encounters, dramatic reversals, large action scenes, cinematic pacing, risky situations. Because of this, Savage Worlds often feels strongest in settings where momentum and conflict stay active. So your game was built around being slow and had a lot of storytelling elements, this would probably not be the game suited to it. But if you are looking for some action mixed with some other things, remember it's still a tabletop role playing game, so it's not just mindless shit, but it is more action focused. Like, it would suck as a farming game. It would be great doing DayZ. Official settings and licensed worlds. Over the years, Savage Worlds supported a large number of official licensed settings. Some well-known examples include Deadlands, Rifts, Flash Gordon, Pathfinder for Savage Worlds, 50 Fathoms, Necessary Evil, Slipstream, Weird Wars, Interface Zero, East Texas University. One of the major appeals of Savage Worlds became the ability to move between wildly different genres while still using familiar core mechanics. It's not a bad idea. I like that because it works for a lot of games because there's like in PC, most every game you're going to play will have the way you move, the way you look around. Like, it's so similar that if you played one, it can become really easy to play the other. Like Rust and DayZ, for example, and Arma. Like all similar ways of playing the thing, right? Plot point campaigns became a major part of Savage World. So this is where I tell you the truth. There's a lot of campaigns or modules, you want to call them, or already made adventures that already have plots built in. Savage Worlds also became known for its plot point campaign structure. The campaigns usually combine major story arcs with open-ended adventure and side missions. This approach allowed groups to experience structured narrative progression while still maintaining player freedom, exploration. Here's an important detail. This is what they say themselves. Sandbox style elements. So AD&D tries to redefine sandbox. When they put a plot in, they understand they're not doing sandbox. Savage Worlds actually acknowledges it. It's elements. So they know if you put a plot in, it's not something you're building up. That's not pure sandbox. But some of the freedom aspects in what they're allowing you to do is elements of sandbox, because sandbox is about freedom. So in their own language, they at least in an honest language recognize sandbox isn't exactly what they're doing the second they're using plots. Doesn't mean you don't use plots in the game, but plots and sandbox are things that the players are going to mainly where they go. That's where it gets built and inspired based on their actions. So they lead the game into plots and everything through their freedom, right? Many Savage World settings became strongly associated with this style of campaign design. Savage Worlds encourages homebrew settings. Savage Worlds became popular among game masters who enjoy building their own worlds. Because the core system is relatively modular, GMs can often create custom edges, introduce setting rules, modify powers, add equipment, alter tone and genre assumptions without rebuilding the entire system. This flexibility made Savage Worlds attractive to homebrew creators, indie publishers, convention GMs, multi-genre campaigns. The system developed a reputation for being adaptable without requiring massive mechanical redesign. The setting often shapes the rules experience. In Savage Worlds, the setting frequently changes not only the story, but also how the mechanics feel during play. A horror campaign may make combat feel dangerous and tense. A superhero setting may make characters feel extremely powerful. A Weird West game may combine shootouts, horror, and occult investigations, supernatural threats. Even though the core mechanics remain recognizable, the setting itself can heavily influence the overall experience at the table. See how valuable this members only stream is? This is a fucking fantastic game. Like, this rundown is money, and just a couple people are getting it. Drift Speed will probably get this later, but this is a good fucking for my streams. I know this is a hot one, and this is money, baby. This is what you're paying for. This when you pay money, I'm giving you something really special here, and I'm probably gonna have both of you look into this game now.